What is good, YouTube? My name is Ash Porter and welcome to the channel, and today I am so excited. We are cracking into this book, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Noah Harari. I'm really sorry if I've absolutely butchered his name, but this is one of the best-selling books. It's one of those books that everyone says you have to read this, you have to read this to understand humanity, to understand our past and our future, and just get to grips with it. And I'm very excited. For all I know is that Harari is like this Israeli historian and philosopher and now best-selling author. And according to his website, let me just check this. He's got 3 famous best-selling books, and between them they have sold over 35 million copies. 35 million copies. Oh my goodness, that is a lot of books. I'm just so excited. You know when you've just read a book that you didn't enjoy and you're like, oh, that was such a slog and it took me ages. And that is what happened with my previous book. But this one, I have high hopes for this. I'm so excited. And so without further ado, I'm going to crack into it. Oh my days. Okay, I think the way to start this morning is just to show you, I don't know if you can see, that is how many notes I made from about 36 pages of reading. So to put it into context, normally there'd be about 3 or 4 lines there, and I've got almost double, triple that. This book is just so fun. I so enjoyed this morning, and there is so much to say. I probably can't every day tell you everything I'm learning and reading, so I'm gonna draw out highlights each day. And so highlight number 1, humans are basically built to function in groups of no more than 150, or at least that's a healthy way to do it, or the way we used to, and that actually the way we cope with it now is by building myth, story, delegating, changing the way we lead and do stuff. But actually we're built innately 150 people, if that, and that's how we function. Think about how many people you come into contact every day with. Way more than that. Our society is not helping us. And then I think the other thing is just really interesting is just this, the fact that there were so many different other races of humans, not species, because it's the genus is the humanness of us, the homo part, and then the sapiens is the species that's our species, our particular human species, the human race across the whole earth now. But the fact there were so many different ones, it's just fascinating. I love it. I am still 2 days in, absolutely loving this book. I think before anything else, it's just written so well. He communicates so clearly. It's not really academic. It's just really understandable, easy to read, well written. At times it's almost poetic in the way he writes, and I'm just loving it. But today, some of the big things is that this idea, right, is interesting, of the Gorging Gene. So this is the concept that, in our modern society, we have the epidemic of not COVID, but of obesity, right? And it's not just the West now, it's moving into the rest of the world. And the problem is we love consuming high calorie, sugary foods, right? And we consume a lot of them. And the Gorging Gene, is this concept that back in our hunter-gatherer days, 30,000, 70,000 years ago, whatever, those kind of foods were really rare. The only natural foods were really good ripe fruits and stuff like that. And if you discovered it, you would eat it straight away, because either someone else is going to come eat it, or baboons or other apes are just going to come and destroy it. And so you would eat, and you would literally gorge it there and then. And so there's this argument that in our genetics, we literally are designed to consume quickly and in vast quantities sugary, high calorie foods. Yet obviously we have an abundance of them in the 21st century, and so it's so bad for us. I've just had one of those moments where I've just been loving reading, I'm so engrossed in it, but then you just get to the end of the chapter and your heart sinks. So we've just been reading a chapter all about basically Homo sapiens since the cognitive revolution, their incredible capacity to kill off everything around them. And how, the world before Homo sapiens was inhabited by these incredible, like, large mammals, these beasts, they're called like megafauna, I think. That's like the technical term for them. And so imagine like saber-toothed tigers, giant sloths, giant snakes in Australia, like giant kangaroos and armadillos and all this kind of stuff. And mammoths is another great example. And ever since we hit the cognitive revolution, we've had this insane ability to destroy and kill everything. The archaeological records just point to the fact that when we went and inhabited a new place, within a few thousand years, we had made basically the majority of the population of these large animals, these incredible animals, extinct. And it just like broke my heart, because he ends the chapter by saying, you have the cognitive revolution, the first wave of extinction, the agricultural revolution, the second wave of extinction, and right now, industrial revolution, 21st century, we're in this new wave, this third wave of extinction, and we're destroying the animals, and it rings so true, and it broke my heart. So today what I was reading about is Harari is basically, I hope that's how you say it, arguing that most of human, modern society, or Homo sapiens' ability to form cultures, larger groups, villages, towns, cities, civilizations, is based on our ability to use our imagination, our ability to form myths and draw together people with shared norms, values, belief systems, all this kind of stuff that is all based around myths, whether it's nations, whether it's money, whether it's, in his opinion, faiths, religions, all of that society, almost like glue in society that brings us together, is all imaginary. It doesn't exist. It's not biology. It's not a reality, yet it still brings us together. Obviously, I think I agree with it for the most part, not necessarily about religions, or at least, I believe in God, and so I don't think that's fake or our imagination, but it is a really interesting concept. Today's reading was basically all about money, and it's just so interesting because what he was writing, and when you think about it, you're like, oh yeah, that's so true. Money is just a figment of our imagination. We basically made it up. It doesn't exist. Yes, coins and the paper notes may exist, but he was saying that, but they don't actually have real value. We've given them a value. They don't have an inherent natural value. And he's saying how, when at the time of writing this book, it's something like there was $60 trillion in the world, and only 6 trillion of those actually physically existed. 90% of it was virtual online in servers somewhere. How crazy is that? But the good side of money is that actually it's a way of connecting people and communicating globally like never before. Money is the language that everyone speaks and allows trade, communication, almost like a trust building between people we've never met. Yet, saying that, money also has a dark side in the sense that it gets people to betray their values. People can drop everything they value and care about for the pursuit of money. And also, I think there's this really good quote where, he was talking a lot about trust building before, but actually is saying the reality is nowadays, and with money, we trust the money, not the person. That's pretty deep. I love it. What a beautiful morning, and what a beautiful morning to read on. And today, I'm just reading all about basically empires, the good, the bad, the reality of it, and how for the last 2,500 years, the world has been ruled by empires of different sorts, whether we like it or not. They're good. They come with good things, they come with bad things. They allow humans to communicate and trade and work on a much bigger scale. Yeah, obviously they assimilate and they take away and destroy cultures, and there are so many cultures which we probably have no clue about because of empires taking over. And yet it just said this really interesting fact that I want to highlight, that the reality is now, in the 21st century, probably every culture that exists has been affected by imperialism and empire. And actually we can try and get away from it, but we're all affected by it. And it's so hard throughout history to pick out the good and the bad, because It's everywhere. You know, the good and the bad is everywhere in everything we do. All our cultures are affected by empire. There you go. We're staying at some friends' house, but I still managed to find some time to get the reading in. You know, knowledge comes first. But this morning was basically all about the revolution of scientific research and how it completely transformed our lives. How for literally millennia, humans just hadn't really endeavoured with it. You know, scientific research wasn't a major thing that people pumped money into, but in the last few centuries, it just boomed, kind of in line with like the Industrial Revolution a little bit. I mean, that definitely helped it. It's just been really interesting. But I think the one thing that stood out to me is that the fascination and obsession with with warfare and creating advanced technologies for that is only recent. It's not something that like has always been around. Like, he gave an example, like gunpowder took I think 600 years from when it was invented and used in firecrackers to actually be put to use within like cannons and guns and things like that. And so for so long it wasn't, you know, advanced warfare, and that technological advancement wasn't something important until very recently, which it's just a bit of an interesting one really. But scientific revolution, absolute madness, changed the course of history. Is it helping us? Maybe. Is it also causing a lot of problems? Definitely. So this morning I was reading all about capitalism a little bit, and how, you know, capitalism started as a theory of economics, a way of doing it, a way of saying, hey, if the economy thrives, you thrive. If I get richer, you get richer. It benefits everyone. But it's kind of developed and turned into a religion, a lifestyle, almost like a cult of capitalism is the thing that solves everything. If the economy is good, life will be good. It's just pretty interesting. And there's another mad fact that I don't know if this is still true, because I know this book's a little bit, I don't know when it was written actually, but probably a few years out of date now. But apparently banks are allowed to lend $10 for every dollar they actually have. So literally 90% of the money which people own or exists doesn't actually exist. It's literally just like I think we've mentioned earlier, on a computer somewhere. Today I did quite a lot of reading, and I feel like there's been so much information, so many different topics thrown at me, and so I can't say it all. But the one thing I really want to highlight from my reading today, because he was talking, there's this section on consumerism, and you know, we're talking about capitalism as well, and it's part of that. And hey, I think he said, this isn't an exact quote, but this is just what I wrote in my notes, is consumerism has helped convince us that indulgence is good, and that frugality, however you say it, being frugal, is bad, and like that's like suppressing our desires and our needs and stuff like that. And I thought that's so interesting, that it's so true. The culture tries to teach us never to be moderate, never to hold back, never to not want more. And consumerism and capitalism that survives because of consumerism, it drives that culture. This morning, I basically was reading about two key concepts. First, like the family and communities, how that has changed over time, how we've gone from being a race of people who are so tightly knitted within our families and communities, and that's where we got our education, our provision, our healthcare, our community, everything like that. Everything came from small communities and our family units, right? But over the last 2 centuries especially, that's expanded into nation states and, you know, communities of 60 million people. And how can we all know that people? And we rely on the state now for all of those different things: education, healthcare, food, whatever it is. There's such an interesting change. But also this final bit is all about happiness, and there's this kind of gloomy thought that basically our happiness is rigged, because we can have all the most amazing things, but if our biochemical system in our body isn't rigged for us to be happy, you're going to find it hard. Like, some people's reactions to winning the lottery are going to be so different, literally based on the biochemistry in their body. So you could literally be born doomed to not really be happy. Boom, there we go. 14th session of reading. I finished it, and the final bit is all about happiness. Basically, it's like, well, what's history? What's learning? What's advancement in, you know, technology, society, if we're not getting happier? And he gives, I mean, even just the final, like, afterward that he has at the end is such a warning. Yeah, we may have got these amazing empires, these incredible technologies, blah, 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 but have we increased, like, the quality of human life? Have we increased people's happiness? And where are we headed? It's a big warning, a great way to end the book. This has been quality. Wow. Just wow, what a book this is. I have flipping loved reading Sapiens. It has been a whirlwind. It took me a while to read because just of life getting in the way, but I actually read it in 14 morning sessions, which I think is pretty good, basically 2 weeks, isn't it? Because it is a chunky boy, and you need to concentrate as you read it as well. You can't just be reading this and not be on top form. But I've loved this journey through this book. It is incredible, and I think some of my closing thoughts like, this was sort of written and finished in 2014, and I even feel like, you know, if he had written this in 2021, what would have changed? Because even in the last 7 years, you can tell this book is a little dated. It sounds bad, but like, so much has happened since then. As there's so much you could still include in the history of Homo sapiens and where we're heading as well, which I know he's written other books about. But I just loved it. I think it's so fascinating trying to understand just humanity and where we've come from and why we do things and where we might be headed. It can be scary, it can be daunting, but Harari just lays it out so well. I think that's it, honestly. I just flipping love this book. I'm going to be making a video in a few weeks' time about, I think it's 6 things I've learned from Homo sapiens, or from Sapiens. And so check that out when it's coming. When it's out, I'll put a link in the description. But I have loved this. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider dropping a like, subscribing to the channel. I've been Ash Porter. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.